Hi, this is Kristen Uthus with New World Orchids in Manchester, Michigan. Today I'm going to show you how I mount a miniature Masdevallia on a clay tile. I'm going to show you today how I mount this Masdevallia minuta. Masdevallias are in the Fertilizer alliance, which means that they are moisture lovers. And that's why I haven't packed in sphagnum moss. This sphagnum actually still looks good. It's pretty fresh. I probably just did him a couple of months ago. So I'm actually going to hold on to this moss and use it in my mount. Is that okay to do? Sure, as long as your moss looks good. Well, what does good looking moss look like? Good looking moss should be fluffy. It should still be, so the stuff on the top here, this algae, is not a bad thing. You may not like the way it looks, but there's nothing wrong with it. But when I look underneath and all of this is still a good color, the other thing that you can do is give it the sniff test. If it smells a little bit musty, it's time for it to go. But this smells nice and fresh. It smells like a fresh summer day at the bog. Now I look at this guy and honestly, I'm really not happy with how the roots look on this. So it's probably good that we pulled him out. To me, the best thing that you can do for any kind of pleurothallid, if it's having a hard time, is increase the humidity. And that might lead you to ask, well, then why would you mount it? Because I pulled it out. So I'm going to mount him for you. We'll just make sure that he gets watered often. But he does have some good roots here, and I'm not concerned that he's gonna fail. He's gonna do great. And you get to see me mount something that has a limited root structure, because that can be a little bit challenging sometimes. All right, so I've got my plant, it's all cleaned off, got my moss that I'm going to use. Now I just have to choose a mount. And I talked in another video about choosing different kinds of mounts. I've got two different cork options here. Cork is usually my go-to. This is some nice virgin cork, really pretty. This is more of a cork board. It's not cork board like you would make a bulletin board out of, but it's more uniform. It's less pretty, but very functional. And then this is one of the clay mounts that Abby from Coldbrook Pottery made for me. And the nice thing about the clay is that it stays cool to the touch even when it's warm outside. Most Masdevallias prefer slightly lower temperatures, so intermediate to cool. A lot of them grow great warm, and this is one of them. This guy's very easy. I think I'm going to try the pretty mount for him because it's such a pretty little plant. So that's what we're gonna try today. So I'm gonna move these guys out of my way. And the next thing is the fishing line that we're going to use. I use a 6-pound test. 4 is perfectly fine. I prefer 6 a little bit more just because it's less flimsy, which makes it easier to work with and a little bit easier to see. As we get older, we struggle more with seeing very fine things like fishing line. So I'm going to make a slip knot, which means making a loop, and then putting another loop inside it, and then pulling it tight. And that gives us an adjustable loop. Okay, then I'm going to set this guy down and pull out some of this moss. I do not need all of this moss by any means, so I'm just going to pull out a little bit. Now, how will I put him on the mount? A couple of different options. I already know what my option is going to be. Now, you could put him on there like this, like he's a bouquet of flowers, and that would be perfectly acceptable. The thing is, though, Masdevallias grow in rosettes, and I want to enjoy that form of the plant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take his tiny little roots, but if the roots were bigger, I would fan them out into a circle. I don't have to do a lot of fanning with this poor guy, but I'm going to put it so that the leaves are pointing right at you, out from the mount, so perpendicular to the mount. Then I'm going to take the moss. Now it's important whenever you're working with moss to make sure that it's at least damp, which makes it, what's the word I'm looking for, flexible, as opposed to breakable. And I'm going to wrap it around the base of the plant. Okay, just like that. So I'm covering the roots. I'm keeping that base covered so that it will stay moist between waterings. But somebody like this, especially because it's a Masdevallia, it's a pleurothallid, I would water this guy every day, every other day at least. And I'm just going to take one more piece just to wrap around. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. I can still see the mount, which is pretty. And I feel like the roots will be encouraged to grow because of the moist moss that's going to be around them. All right, then I take my slip knot that I've already made, okay, and I'm going to start down here at the bottom, put my slip knot over, and then pull the knot tight on the back here and start wrapping. So I'm going to take my next one close to the middle of the plant, and then I'm going to do what some people might think is the unthinkable. I'm going to go through the middle of the plant. Here's why. One, it's important that you secure the plant so that it absolutely will not move on the mount when you're done. If it moves, it will never be successful. The new roots will never attach, and in fact you'll keep knocking the new roots back every time they start to form. So you have to make sure that the plant is secure. I'm doing this tightly enough that the plant will be secure, but not so tight that I'm going to cut anything. And you can, if you wanted to get really fancy, fortunately this guy had a nice little pocket right down the middle. I could do one more right here that's going to be easy for me. And I'm watching where the leaf bases are. I'm just going to do that. One more across the top here to secure the moss. I'll go back through the middle just because it's pretty easy. And one more down here at the bottom. Now that plant, I assure you, is secure. So now we go to the finishing off of the wraps, which goes to the back. So I'm going to use, because I'm a righty, I'm going to use my left thumb to hold this end tail. I'm going to cut that off. Got some moss in my way here. It's going to make it harder for you to see what I'm doing. Okay, so here's the tail that I just cut. This was our first tail, where we started. Oh gosh, come on. Okay, that took me a second to get, but okay, so I've got my first tail, my ending tail, and where the first tail was, there's the knot that we started with, and now we have this V right here. That's from the first wrap. I'm going to put my end tail into the V. That's going to then pull against that first knot, which means that it keeps tension on the whole thing, all the wraps that you just did. So now I can just do 3 quick, 1, 2, 3 to be sure, 3 quick half hitches and trim the tail, and the plant is done. Now sometimes I notice that the plant may have come a little bit off kilter while I was finishing up, so you can actually just give them a little nudge so that he's nicely centered, and it's all done. So I'm going to give them a shake. You can see that plant is going nowhere. And then you can water him really well. The last thing I would do is make a nice tag for him. Now, the problem with this tag is it does not have a hole in it. You can make a hole, or you can use a tag that has a hole if you're lucky like I am. And write the name on here, and also write down the date. For me, I use the month. It's 11 of 20. So that tells me when I mounted this plant, so that when I look back, I'll know exactly when it was. I'm going to put his name on here and then hang him up, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with my Masdevallia that we just mounted here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about things that I sometimes add both to my potted plants and to my mounted plants. The first thing is, this is crushed oyster shell, which is available at any local hardware store or feed store, because people use this with their chickens as a calcium supplement, and that's what we use it for. It's a calcium supplement for your orchids. It's more important for some orchids than others, but because we use rainwater, calcium is an issue for us. The nice thing about calcium is that if your plants, in fact, don't need it because you have plenty in your water, it still won't hurt them. So it doesn't hurt to add a little bit. So to get it into a mounted plant is a little bit trickier than getting it onto a potted plant, of course. But what you can do is just pull your moss back a little bit and then just give it a little dusting down there. You can kind of push it in. You won't really see it on the outside, but every time you water, it'll release a little bit of calcium. So that helps the plant. Pleurothalids grow in limestone-rich areas, which means that they do grow with a lot of calcium in general. So it doesn't hurt to add it to these guys. They really like a lot of calcium. The other thing that I add is NutriCoat. NutriCoat is a slow-release fertilizer. If you're a gardener, you may have heard of Osmocote. NutriCoat is formulated to be less temperature sensitive and to release more evenly over time. Also, it's good for 6 months, which is great because who wants to think about adding more? I like to use, maybe for a plant this size, maybe like 2 or 3 berries. I do fertilize, so you might say, well, if you do fertilize, then why do you need that? Hey, who doesn't like a snack? I like a snack. Plants like snacks. So just going to put a couple here underneath the moss to hold them in place. Do you have to do this? No. It's just something I like to do sometimes. And I figured I'd show you. Okay, so it's under there. Can't even see it. It's doing its magic. Out of the way. Got my well-labeled and dated tag on here. Got my hook. We're all set to go. Gonna give them a good watering and then get them hung up somewhere.
Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and check out our website for products and more growing tips. Cheers!